Well, we have large wealth and opportunity gaps. A couple of years ago, I wrote a piece which was called "Why and How Capitalism Needs to Be Reformed," because besides not being fair, it is not achieving the goal of being able to have broad-based opportunity, because capitalism intrinsically creates prosperity, but it creates it in a different way for different people.
Right.
And that tends to be self-perpetuating, because those who earn the money then take care of their kids and they have better education and so on. And if you look at the bigger cycle, when you get up and rich and then you get into some problems, you have wealth gaps and the whole thing gets challenged. And that's the cycle that we're in. And so the question is how do you make productivity continue to increase rather than just redistribution?
Right.
And so that's where we are politically. We have that conflict. We see the left-right conflict. We see it play out now in the tax bills and so on. We're going to see it in the 2022 elections. You're going to see it in and that conflict itself is the ingredients of some form of civil war conflict. It doesn't lend itself to working together. The question is, what's a war? A war, it doesn't have to be killing each other. Okay, well, I don't mean it that way. I mean, but sometimes when it gets out of control, it does lead to that. It's a good thing that we read history and see how it is left in the past, how moderation has gone to extremism. It's something we should be aware of. But it is, we certainly have kind of a war developing between the various factions, the states, and so on, and how that'll be resolved. Like in the 2022 elections, there's still the question, there's talk of systematically challenging those elections.
Right.
And if there's a systematic challenge, that's a challenge to democracy. Because if you don't know who gets to sit in the seat to make the votes, how do you resolve that kind of thing if the system isn't there? It depends how extreme we get. I'm not talking about the fact that we will go there. I'm just saying you have to be aware of it, and the more we're aware of it, maybe the more cautious we're going to be not to be that way. But if we don't pull together as a country, okay, if we keep fighting with each other and have this together with the bad finances and together with a rising power challenging the existing power, that's not going to be putting forward our best. Well, you always have to take the first thing you have to do is deal with the tail risk. Eliminate the tail risk in one way or another and then go from there. You can eliminate tail risks with a very small percentage of your portfolio, right? It can be done, and that's a structural question. Not only what assets you hold, but also what options you might hold or whatever you might do to eliminate that tail risk, right? Because the market is not really taking that tail risk and pricing it in. So eliminate it, okay? And so in market positions and so on, you can do that. I mean, if you just take lines on charts and you basically see what's going on in terms of basic fundamentals, there are more than four times as many Chinese, and so if they had an average per capita income that was half the average American, they will be twice as large as the United States. And if you take their growth rate and so on, it is likely that China, and today, China is comparable in many ways. They're a larger percentage of world trade. They're comparable in GDP production, depending on whether you're doing it PPP adjusted or not, and so on. So it is a reality today that they're roughly comparable and that they are get their strength at a faster rate than we are. That's a reality. A lot of people have not spent a lot of time there. I've been going there since 1984, and I've been very lucky to know many people, from the most common people to the most senior leadership and so on and so forth. And I think you have to understand what's going on, and I'll just try to say it in a nutshell, okay? Everybody follows the approach that they believe is best for their own country. I can't tell you whether their approach, our approach, my job isn't to do that. But they have a top-down approach rather than a bottom-up approach, very much like a strict parent. So the question, the riddle that you have to have answered before is, how does a communist party that talks about Marxist-Leninism and at the same time has the second largest capital markets, and the development of capital markets coexist. And the answer to that is that they believe that capitalism is a way of increasing the wealth and power of the country. That's been key. At the same time as there's an important to redistribute it. If you look at the policies of that are being dealt with now, and I could rattle off the 4 elements of those policies, they're not going to disrupt. They're not going back to what you would call the old communism. That they're very practical people, and so the issue is really more control. Like they will tell your kids how many video games they can watch, where you wouldn't. It's like a strict parent. And they will redistribute the wealth. But if you take the measurements of capitalism right now, I have a continuum, a lot of measures I won't get into, but of capitalism, the United States and China are the most capitalist countries. And if you were to say, will they go as far to the left as Europe has gone? It's unlikely that they will go as far to the left as Europe has gone on those measures, whether those are tax, redistribution, the effect of capital markets and the like. And you can't get in and out of a place on a basis of that. In addition, you need diversification. Okay, so if you have 2 great powers, 2 developments of technologies and so on and so forth, and you're looking what percentage of your portfolio do you have here and what percentage of your portfolio there, diversification is a key element. So when I look at it, I think that there are risks in the United States, there are risks there, we can talk about those. Diversification is important, and I think the fundamentals are basically sound.